with the podcast where we uncover real stories and practical wisdom from entrepreneurs, trade people, and business leaders who have built success through skill, grit, and resilience. Today, I'm joined by John Lesser, a seasoned sales expert with over 40 years of experience. John is the creator of Sustainable Sales System, a psychology-driven framework that takes the fear, fog, and friction out of selling. He has helped countless business owners reframe sales from pushy to sales-driven, service-driven, making it honest, repeatable, and effective. And it's a pleasure having you on the show.
All right. Thank you so much. Absolute pleasure meeting you, and I look forward to talking
thank
to
you.
your audience.
So, John, what was it like growing up for you?
I would say nothing particularly special. And I mean that sincerely because I am what's considered in the United States white middle class. So we didn't have the challenge of money and we didn't have the challenge of no money. Life is somewhat predictable. There's not too much that is out of the ordinary. And we're not going to talk about this now, but I actually believe that growing up white middle class in the United States when I did is not an advantage. It is a disadvantage. That's a conversation for a whole nother time.
Thank you. So what were those earlier jobs you actually do that shapes your mind when it comes to sales and when it comes to what you do today?
So I actually started out, I got interested at a much earlier age. I got interested in television repair. I said, wow, that sounds like a nice field. Everybody's going to need their TV repaired. Little did I know what we have today. And as I was in the television repair class, and I liked it, I enjoyed it. I had no idea what I was doing, but I still enjoyed it. My instructor told all of us, he said, this is very interesting, but you might want to be thinking about the future. And I said, why? What is the future? And he said, computers. And I said, what are those? And so he said, no, we also teach a computer repair class. Now, you have just to put it in perspective for your listeners, the machine that we were using as a test machine, we only programmed it in 0 and 1, no assembler, no basic, no nothing. All right. And we thought it was a huge machine because it had 1K of memory and we could not figure out what you would ever do with that much memory. Think about that. So long story short, I went on and I started doing computer repair and I kind of enjoyed it. And I worked for this very small company in New Jersey. And we were the United States distributor of a very specialized computer for business. And my boss walked in. I mean, there's only 5 of us in the company. And he walked in one day and he said, I got good news and bad news. I said, well, okay, that's always a great way to start the conversation. I said, tell me what's going on. He said, well, the parent company, they were up in Canada, decided that they didn't want us as a U.S. distributor anymore. They didn't want to own us. So they would cut us free and we would be our own Well, it's good and it's bad. I mean, there are certain benefits to it. He said, so there's certain benefits to it. He said, the bad news is that unless we're selling, I don't need somebody to repair. I said, gee, thanks for the heads up. I said, what are the options? He said, well, you can leave or you can learn how to sell. You can sell this stuff.
Well,
I said, well, I'm not going to go home to my wife and tell her I don't have a job right now. So I'm going to go try to sell this. And the worst thing possible happened. The worst thing. I was successful.
Amazing. Wow.
Because when you're successful early on, you don't know what mistakes you're making. So then when you stop being successful, you don't know why you stopped being successful and you don't know how to turn it around. So it isn't a benefit. It's a liability. And I went like that for a few years with ups and downs. And I finally said, look, this is crazy. I have no idea what I'm doing. I had product knowledge and I sold primarily because of 2 things. One, because I had a technical understanding of what I was offering. But the second thing was that I was very attuned to the customer. So they liked me. And I said, I better do something about this. So I went and I took a Dale Carnegie course. And what it taught me that I just had never even thought about, didn't realize in those early days was it taught me that sales is a system. It's not just winging it. There are processes in sales. And if you understand the process, you're further along. Because otherwise you go down the road and you get stopped and you have no idea why you got stopped. You have no idea where you are in the process. So you don't understand what tactics to use to get back on process. So that, yeah. And I just kept learning and kept, winning and losing and eventually got to the point where I actually became quite successful. And I was noticing things as this was going on. And I was noticing that the biggest problem in sales has nothing to do with your customer. The biggest problem in sales has to do with the organization you're with, the people that you're around, and what's going on between your ears.
Wow.
And stuff that that I had read and all the stuff that I taught, and most of the stuff I still see being sold today from a book's perspective or from sales training, makes the biggest mistake that I'm trying to correct. And the biggest mistake is we're telling people that sales is about what you do to somebody else. So here are 6 tactics to get your prospect to say yes. Here are 5 ways to upgrade your order. Here are 3 things to say to them that will make them feel comfortable. Wait a minute. When you really get down to the essence of sales, it is not about persuasion. Sales at its essence is about helping another person solve a problem, a personal problem and a business problem. And when you do that, you have to figure out who you are and what's stopping you from being the best person and the best advocate for your customer. Persuasion is very interesting if you actually go back and create a timeline of the history of sales. And what you'll see is that sales in the very, 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 very beginning, all right, was nothing more than a person who was raising animals and a person who was raising feed. And one said to the other, hey, I will trade you one of my animals for so much of your feed. No, I think I need that animal and I'll only give you so much feed. Now, we would look at that and say it's negotiations, but it's sales. So originally it was, how am I helping my neighbor to solve a problem where I benefit, but it's fair? And we've gotten completely away from that. And we've gotten to this whole notion of, how do I persuade or how do I push somebody to do something that I want, not what they want? It's wrong.
Wow. This is really, really amazing. Thank you so much, John. But before that, what was the moments earlier in your career that make you realize that you would be more than just sales? It would be more than just a job, the lifetime calling.
When the money started coming in, I'll be honest with you, Aro. When you see this all the time, what are the top 10 careers for the next 5 years? Where can you make the most money for the next? You see this all over the internet, even more so now. And what was interesting was one of the top careers back when I looked at it was marketing. But marketing and sales are not the same. They're very different, but they're so closely aligned. So in a sense, at that point, I was trying to get my way to marketing through sales. And I mean this sincerely, and people have to understand this. The money that I was making was very, very good. It was. Even though I pride myself on being an honest salesperson, I was still making very good money. And it's hard to leave that. It's a lifestyle because you're living according to the things that you can do and you can afford. It's hard to leave that. So I got sick one day and I was so sick, nobody could understand what was wrong with me. I could barely even move off the couch. My wife had to basically drag me out of the house to get to the doctor's office. I was so sick. I couldn't drive. I couldn't even see. And it was the end of the quarter. So my boss was calling me every day going, hey, we got to close this deal. Hey, we got to close this deal. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be alive tomorrow morning. I don't know if I'm going to wake up. I really don't. And my doctor, who was actually one of the best in the United States, had no idea what was going on with me. I said, I don't know what's doing. And I got very upset because I have a lot of pride in my work and I want to do what I need to do and I want to do what I commit to do. So I was getting very upset, even though I was very sick. And after about the 3rd day of my boss just harassing me and hounding me, I said, okay, either I have to quit or I have to look at this in a different way. And I said, why am I doing this? And I said, well, the money's there, but the money's there in a lot of other places. I said, what I really, really enjoy, because I enjoy technology. It was still new at that point. I said, but what do I enjoy more than technology? I said, I enjoy helping my customers figure out what their real problem is and then helping them solve that problem. And I came upon that and I said, fine, that is how I'm going to look at my work from now on. And if anybody tries to get in my way relative to, oh, well, you got to close this deal for this or for this quarter or for anything else, I'm just going to say, no, I'm not doing it. I'm going to leave.
Amazing. Amazing. So more like, I think from your years of experience, how will you define sales from marketing? Because it just makes two distinct parts and the fact that they are two different things. I know a whole lot of my audience, when it comes to sales, some of them actually more like still miss it for marketing. So if you had to actually more like explain this to a layman, what would be just an explanation of how sales differ from marketing?
It's simple. Marketing is the science of making the potential buyer population aware. And you're either making them aware that they have a problem or you're making them aware that you have a solution. That's really all that marketing does. So it creates an interest or it creates a desire, which is why so many ads in the United States, especially around cars, always involve attractive women. because the predominant buyer of cars up until recently have been men. So if you want to sell a guy a car, put a pretty woman in the ad.
Yeah.
So the guy's brain associates, if I buy this car, I can attract this woman, which is crazy, but it worked.
So true. So true.
It works. It works. So marketing just says, hey, you have a problem, all right? We have a solution. And if you say it enough, then that brand kind of gets stuck inside the buyer's head. So that when they're actually really finding out that they need a solution, that they go to you. Sales, on the other hand, says, how do I help this individual, or this company, but now you're down to an individual basis, it's micro versus macro. How do I help this person identify their needs and make a decision to go forward?
Wow. How do I make them define the needs and go forward? Wow.
Yeah. Now, what you're seeing today, and this is what people need to understand, is that because we understand so much about buyer behavior, that in the social media world and in the technology world, a lot of products are combining the marketing and sales in one step. Because you can have sales without a salesperson. And we see this all the time. If you go to Amazon, there's no salesperson or whatever, I'm sure that you have your own likes over there, all right? But there's no salesperson, all right? There's no salesperson on Slack or on WhatsApp or on any of these systems, but you are consuming the product. So what I specialize in is where there are people involved in the sale, not where there are systems involved in the sale.
Amazing. I think there is a whole lot of elements of care and emotion when it comes to sales, being that you're dealing with people in real time and the fact that you're looking forward to solutions that meet their needs. And it's quite very, very lovely. So you described 3 common fears: fog and friction. Can you break down what each of those mean?
Yeah, it's fear, fog, and friction. And it's states of a business owner. Potentially, not everybody falls into this. And the fear side is where the business owner or the founder, however you want to classify them, has negative feelings and negative emotions about sales. Oh, sales is bad. Salespeople are sleazy. I can't stand sales. I could never do that, because they believe it's manipulation, using it as a bad word. They believe it's contriving. So they see a negative side of sales. And some of them are now going, oh, well, no, I don't sell, I service. No, you're kidding yourself and you're fooling yourself. Because if you don't sell something, there is no revenue, your company does not exist. So you can stand there on holy ground as much as you want and think that, you're different. You're not. You're no different than anybody else. So there's that set. That's the fear set. The fog set is they don't necessarily fear sales. They just have no background or no training in it. A lot of people, most people coming out of corporate, don't understand sales because unless they've been in a sales role, they never had a requirement to understand sales. They understand accounting, they understand law. There's lots of skills, but you get bounced out of corporate, you don't have a background in sales, okay? And the friction is they don't fear it. They kind of think that they get it, but it's not really clicking the way they'd like it to. So maybe it's uneven. Maybe they can't fill their pipeline the way they would. Maybe they get into a conversation and they keep hearing, hey, that sounds great. I'll think about it. Or, yeah, maybe not now, but maybe later. So how do we help all 3 of those groups? Because there is a group that has none of that problem. They're fine. I'm not going to help them. I'm trying to help.
Wow. Yes.
Right?
Wow. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So many business owners dread sale. What do you think are so many people fearing sales, and how can they actually begin to shift that mindset in terms of fear?
They fear sales simply for this reason. They have mental models or mindsets, however you want to describe it, that have been built up over time that tells them there is something wrong with sales. So I'll throw a couple of things at you. Give you an example. A mother and father take their 4-year-old child. They need a new car. It's Saturday. They take the child and they go car shopping. Now, again, I don't know how this plays out in Nigeria, but I'm just going to give you a United States-based kind of scenario. But they walk into the showroom and the salesperson comes over. Hey, how can I help you? Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Yes, you definitely want to buy this car. Hey, I can get you in this car by the end of today. Hey, we're doing a special. And the father says, that's okay, thanks. We're just looking right now. The salesperson walks away. The father looks at the mother and goes, I hate salespeople. They're so scummy. What does the 4-year-old child's subconscious hear?
Yeah, that salespeople are bad people.
Exactly. But Aro, here's the real key. When does that surface into the conscious mind?
I think it was at that particular moment when the dad make reference of it, and
that's when it goes in.
When it
comes out
is when it comes out when they are of age and they actually want to go into sales, and But their business required it.
Yes. Okay. Yes. That's the whole point. And we've done, at least in this country, we've done the same thing in our television and in our movies. We've made salespeople look like bad people. We've done it. Why? Because there's this mindset or there's this belief. It's not based on fact that salespeople are bad. And the American public buys into that, and they will go see a movie and pay whatever it is, $10 or $15 to see that movie to reinforce a wrong belief. That's the beauty of marketing, because marketing can get you to believe the wrong thing if they do it right. And that's how they make money. Now, here's the other piece that's so fascinating. It's been said that something like 60 or 70% of who you are, of your belief system as an adult, was put into you by the time you were 6 years old. You have no idea this exists in your subconscious. Your subconscious just sits there and holds this stuff, doesn't tell you. And it goes and hits your conscious and makes you make a wrong decision. It hits your You don't know this. And we spend billions of dollars talking to psychologists about, hey, can you help me? $200 an hour, $250 an hour. What I'm saying is, look, for some people, that's great. But hey, let's just recognize when you're feeling that. Let's figure out what you're feeling and let's move on. And when I can get people to understand why they feel the way they feel, get people to understand. I'll give you one example. One of the things people said they don't like about sales is it's manipulation. Have you ever gone to a chiropractor?
No, I haven't.
You're familiar with a chiropractor, right? What does he do? Chiropractor aligns the spine. That's the primary thing that they do. How does he align the spine? By manipulating it. So when you're in pain, you go to a chiropractor to get your back manipulated. But if you're thinking about sales, manipulation's a bad word. So we have these words that are charged because we haven't questioned what they mean. So I take people through exercises that helps them come to an understanding of how they feel, why they feel, what's driving it. Because if they feel that way, they can't be effective. And here's the really interesting part. Have you ever walked up to a dog or a cat and they look at you, they sniff you, and they back away from you? It happens. And the reason they do that is because they get a sense of you that is not comforting to them. They think that there's something wrong. They don't know because they're not going to sit there and rationalize it. Aro seems like a nice guy, dresses properly, but there's something about him. No, they have this sixth sense, okay? Well, what we haven't really explored a whole lot of is how much of that sixth sense is in the buyer. So if you come to the buyer as a salesperson and you have all of this questioning and negative thoughts and unresolved conflicts in you, buyer, like it or not, picks it up. You haven't said anything. You haven't done anything. It's an energy. If we can take away those negative feelings, those negative thoughts, and put you in alignment with what you're trying to do, you're not going to generate that. That's the first part of my MUVs, M-U-V-S. That's the first part of it. And that's the foundational piece.
Wow, this is really amazing.
It's what you project. And I can use any example that I want on the trades, because the trades to me are really fascinating, because the trades I think are in the worst shape of anybody here in the States too. The guys in the trades that understand what I'm talking about are making millions of dollars, not hundreds of thousands. They're making millions of dollars. Okay. And the people that I now have that I rely on, if I have something wrong in my house, because I just, I live in a house and I'll need a plumber and an electrician, a handyman, those kinds of things. The people that I have for the most part, except for two of them, I've had for over 25 years. Because there's a trust factor that builds. So here's what's interesting for your folks to understand. When you meet somebody, an impression of you is made within roughly the first 90 to 120 seconds. Think about this. And the person's subconscious makes a decision based in that time that you're okay to deal with or that you're not okay to deal with. And if you're okay to deal with, the next 45 minutes or an hour goes fine. And after a few things that they have to do, and this is tactics in here too, then they make a decision to buy from you. If they decide you're not okay, then they spend the next 45 minutes rationalizing their decision not to do business with you.
It's amazing.
That's pretty sick.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you do, and I don't find virtually anybody talking about this. Nobody tells you how important that first minute or 2 minutes is and how the whole sale rides on. And this is because we're really interesting characters. We can't really tell unless we really are tuned into this. We can't really tell what we felt about that person that said buy or don't buy, because it's happening at a subconscious level.
Wow.
So when your buyer walks into the house, he's got 90 to 120 seconds, and this is what I want your listeners to understand, not to get the job to fix the faucet that's leaking, but to earn the status of that household's plumber going forward.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. This is profound. Basically means at the end of the day, the way we get to present ourselves speak volumes on it, even speak louder in terms of sales marketing than what we actually will sell. Yeah, thank you. So for a trade person or small business owner who doesn't see themselves as a salesperson, where is the best place to start?
See, that's a very, very tough question. The cheapest and easiest place to start, go online, and this is the book I wrote. It's called Winning the Inner Game of Sales. And I wrote this after COVID for all the salespeople that were bounced out of a job because the business owners didn't understand how to shift in COVID. And we had a lot of that. So a small business owner who really couldn't figure out how they would remake themselves overnight went out and unfortunately wound up firing their salespeople. And so there's a lot of, and you have it too, there's a lot of businesses that have one salesperson or two salespeople. And most of those salespeople are not what I would consider to be top grade professional salespeople. They're not, because if they were, they'd be stepping up into different roles. But they didn't have the proper perspective, so they got hurt because they didn't know how to protect themselves. And that's what I'm talking about in here. And a lot of it is the mindset. I would start with mindset. If they get and start to understand that and they really want to accelerate this, then I would say get in touch with me and let's have a conversation and I'll take them through the program.
Thank you so much for that.
Because it's not easy. And here's the other thing I'll have to mention to you, Aro, because this is so important to understand. And I'll give you an example. I'm working with a client who is borderline genius. I mean, the man is very, very smart. And he's in a highly, highly specialized portion of the technology sector. He owns his own business, but he's a solopreneur. He came out of corporate, decided he wanted to do this. So I had a great corporate career. And too many things wrong with him. I mean, I had to take him through the whole process. After about 4 or 5 months, I said, hey, are we making any progress in your estimation? Now, he's the CEO, very bright. He said, I'll tell you what, he said, the most significant change you have helped me with up to date is that I realized I did not know how to speak to another CEO. Think about it. He did not know how to communicate with his clients. The plumber walks in the door and thinks that what the person cares about is the sink that's leaking. That's not what they care about. There's 10, 15, 20, 100, a million other things that they could be thinking about that's really, really bothering them. It's just manifested or it's just brought about because the sink is leaking. 90, 120 seconds, you get the chance to show them that you care or you don't. There are two sales. There are two sales in almost every situation. The initial sale and the subsequent sales. The initial sale is the leaky faucet. The subsequent sale is redoing the entire bathroom. When I first called the plumber in, paid him $500 because he had to fix the faucet in the sink. When I brought him back last year, the price tag for the project was $40,000. He never would have gotten the $40,000 or his piece of it if he hadn't done the right thing in that $500. The first sale is not done on trust. The first sale is done because the subconscious says it's okay. The subsequent deals are based on trust. And people try to do the trust thing too soon and they blow.
Yeah, so true. So true, so true. Yeah, thank you so much for that. So in your experience, what is the single biggest reasons deals stalls out?
Because there's two reasons. One is because the buyer does not feel that the seller understands them enough or cares about them enough.
Yeah.
And correlated to that is because the seller has not gotten the buyer to understand the value that they bring to the table. This is not product. And there's a lot of research now that's talking about the fact that buyers are less concerned about product because they can get all of their information on the internet. What they're concerned about is will they actually realize the value that product says that it will give them. And the value in a lot of cases, the larger the deal, the more complex the deal, the more important this becomes. The value is not in the product. The value is in all of the support, emotional, physical, technical, financial, all of that the seller provides.
Wow. That's really amazing. This just speaks volumes to beyond selling, beyond the tech, beyond knowing what your product entails. There's a whole lot of things that we need to know about sales because a whole lot of person just figure out that once they know the technical know-how of what their product entails, they are good at sales. And from your definition, it just speaks volume to being good with the technical aspect and the product description does not actually more like guarantees, does not even correlate to being good at sales. Because sales, it's another different level because there's the whole lot of things that get to be in place before your clients can even accept you before they can actually even accept you into their space and and view you with the right perspective of selling to them.
Yeah.
So
It's
So
it's
you
different.
emphasize early win in your sales process. Why are quick wins so important for momentum?
Yeah, we got to build that a little bit. It's not so much the quick win. That's not what's important. When you understand, are you familiar? I don't know if you and your listeners are familiar with the concept of a raving fan.
Raving fan.
Yeah, this was written by, I can't remember who wrote it. It's not that recent, but it's a very simple but very, very difficult concept. And the concept is that you should not be, the purpose of a sale is not to close a deal. The purpose of a sale should be to start the process of creating a raving fan. Why do you care about raving fans? Here's why. Raving fans, people, customers that you are emotionally and value-based aligned with, that you can service in a way that they expect reasonably and you can deliver. You're going to love this. So everybody take a deep breath. Stay with you longer. Buy more from you. Argue price. This is what's so fascinating. They don't argue price with you. If my plumber comes in and says, it's going to cost you $1,000, I'm going to say, okay, Artie, do it. Don't argue. Artie, you got to understand this. You don't argue with them. Okay. And the last part of a raving fan is they will provide you more references than you could ever ask them to. So how do you create a raving fan? There are many, many steps to it, and it's documented. But one of the things is you have to understand that along this continuum, you're going from the point that they are aware of you, that's marketing, to the point that sales gets involved. And now you're getting into implementation. During all of that time, you and your organization, even if it's just you have not earned their trust yet. So at any point, they can back off. At any point, you can kill a deal. At any point, they can give you a negative review. So what you want to do is you want to make them feel good as quickly as humanly possible. So what you described as a quick win, what I define as what I call first instance of value. So when do they first get value? Now, you should know that based on what you do. Because the value is not only in the product. The value could be in a recognition. The value could be a financial side. The value could be knowing that their data looks different. There are many, many ways that a human being can get value. And it's the faster you can make sure they get that value and point it out to them so that they understand it and they recognize it, the more comfortable they're going to be with you, which makes the rest of the process go smoother. So if you keep giving them value points along the way, you shorten the amount of time it takes to turn them into a raving fan.
Amazing. I think your description of a raving fan just speaks volumes to how sales the way sales ought to be done right. If you're actually more like all the bosses being checked, being that just the way you make reference of it, you at every point of the point, you actually more like giving them values. And over time, the benefit of it is very, very huge, being that they stays longer, they don't argue price with you, and they even more like create a whole lot of revenue, being that they bring their friends and every other person to actually come around to do business with you. This is really a lovely way of actually more like looking at sales. Not just seeing it as a point of more like, at the end of the day, making sale from the first sale, but the fact that you're actually more like creating more like a connection, which actually leads to more and more and more and more deals.
So I'll give you an example that some of your listeners can walk away from. So your kitchen sink faucet is leaking. You don't feel like replacing it, so you call your plumber. And he says, okay, well, I can replace it. It'll cost X. And you okay, go ahead, replace it. So he goes out and he buys the part. Now, he knows as a plumber, because he can figure this out, he knows what the life expectancy on that part is because the manufacturer tells you that. The manufacturer says, well, it's probably good for 5 years. It's probably good for 3 years, whatever the case might be. Not one single plumber puts in his notebook, I installed Aro's faucet today. It's good for 3 years. I'm just going to ping him with an email note or with some kind of an instant message 2.5 years and go, hey, how's everything? How's your faucet? Because when that faucet goes, if you don't remember him, you're going to call somebody else. That's stupid. I'll take this to another one of your trades. I put a new roof on the house a few years ago. And we, again, don't know how the houses are built in Nigeria, but we have what's called vent stacks that come out of the roof. PVC piping that comes out of the roof. Pretty standard stuff. And what they have to do is they have to put this metal piece around it that then goes flush with the roof, because usually most of our roofs are on a slant as opposed to flat roofs. So they put that in, and then they put flashing on it. Now the roof has typically anywhere from a 25 to 50 year lifetime, 25 to 50 year warranty. So I said to my roofer, I said, wow, that's interesting. I said, how long does that flashing last around the vent pipe? He goes, 5 years. Do you know how much business they could do if they just remembered that for each customer? 5 years later said, none of them ever done it. That's just dumb.
Really. Wow, this is amazing. Just seeing another different perspective, and reaching out to maintain communication can actually more like even grant you a whole lot of deals, other than just leaving it all out on the table.
Yeah.
So, Boxo, what does mindset play in sustainable long-term success in sale? How does mindset actually play out?
Give me an example of who you think we want to answer this
Okay,
for.
let's say for a painter who what he does basically is to actually more like paint houses and change the look to another different thing. Let's say he was being called by a particular client to come check his space, and being that he doesn't know what sales actually entails, and maybe why the cost of negotiation, and he can't communicate better. So I'm just trying to see at what point is mindset actually more like is key towards more like selling to a particular client, depending on how the conversation go between the clients and the technical person who is about to do the job, so that the job will actually fall through. You get to get the contract.
So we keep going back to the same points, which is really fascinating to me. Here's what the painter has to understand, is that when he is speaking to that person, there are two people that he's speaking to. He's not speaking to one, he's speaking to two people. It's in the same body, but they're two people. One is the emotional buyer. The other is the rational buyer. Most of them speak to the rational buyer and don't speak to the emotional buyer. The emotional buyer makes the decision and justifies it based on what the rational buyer tells them. So he's got to sell the emotional buyer. Again, he's got that 90 to 120 second thing to do. He's got to sell the emotional buyer and let the emotional buyer listen to the rational buyer, but not be driven by the rational buyer. And too often they'll go in and they'll focus right on, okay, well, I can do this and it'll cost X. But he is never, and this is why I say in MUVs, that the third piece of MUVs is this whole notion that the vast majority of business owners don't understand the value that they bring. The value is not dollars, but they don't. They keep going. Because what's like this? The major conversation that any kind of seller gets into with a buyer, and the worst sellers get into it more often than the good sellers, is the question of price. And the question of price is nothing more than the rational buyer saying, Mr. Seller, you haven't convinced the emotional buyer of your value. I mean, why does somebody buy a Bentley or a Rolls Royce? It's not because it gets better gas mileage. It's not a financial decision they're making. It's totally an emotional decision. It holds true in every case, every single case. And when the seller understands the emotional situation of the buyer, they are able to create a offering to the emotional buyer that's much more palatable and generally higher priced than the typical.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that, John. But why does sales feel difficult today compared to in the past, especially for small business?
One, because a lot of the small business people have no background. That's what I'm trying to do. Is I'm trying to give them the background that they need. It's not background, right? Because look, there was a certain group of people historically in every environment that their family were what I would call traders. I mean, a small business person really is. You go back in history, and even some countries today, they're traders. They live in the world of negotiation. Right? They understand that. All right. Especially, you look at Africa and some of the other countries, that's how they live. Especially in the United States, that's not. We've become specialized. The Industrial Revolution put us into boxes, and they made the box go smaller and smaller. And now they try to get out of that box because the box is stifling to a lot of people. They don't have a background as a trader. They don't understand that kind of give and take. They only understand the give and take in a corporate environment. That's one. The second is what we used to sell on for many, many years was knowledge. So I had more information as the seller than you as the buyer, which means that I got to sell by controlling what and when I told you. It's gone. Buyers today know more about the seller's product than the seller.
So true.
Not only that, but buyers now can rate you. They can go online and compare you. They can get alternate pricing. Right? They can get everything they need. I can go right now to ChatGPT and said, I'm looking for a painter in my area. Tell me who the top 10 painters are and tell me who the worst painters are.
Yeah.
It's going to tell me, you know this because you do it too in 45 seconds.
So true. So true. Wow. Yeah.
Right. So that advantage is lost. And because the buyer side has progressed, the seller side has not progressed as much, except for the really good sellers are tracking this all the time, which is why they're the really good sellers. That's why I said earlier, I am not targeting all of the sellers. I'm only targeting the sellers that have one of the three problems: the fear, the fog, and the friction. The really good ones keep track of this. They understand what this is all about. And there's more than enough research on it. In fact, I have a pre-release of somebody's book. I'm reading it right now, and it's basically talking about that 90 to 120 seconds. He's written an entire book on it.
Wow.
Oh yeah, but there's so much knowledge about this. So substitution is there. Okay, competitive analysis is there. Price differentials are there. The buyer doesn't need the seller to come in and, one, be their friend, two, tell them about the product that they don't know. What they need to do, the seller needs to help the buyer get through that whole emotional situation. They need to display that they're honest. What is the seller most concerned about? And I said this before. Will they get the value that they believe you should give them? Will they be hurt by that decision?
Most John, thank you so much. So, looking back at your decades of experience, what has been one of the most rewarding transformation that you have witnessed with your clients?
As I said, because I've done this in a number of cases, I have worked with clients, and when I really looked at what they were trying to accomplish, I knew what they were trying to buy, I knew what they were trying to spend. I helped them justify the process. I helped them go through the process, but then what I helped them do is get a promotion. That's one of. The other is I became very good friends with some of them. Just because if you care that much about another human being and you work that hard for the other human, you're bound to become friends with some of them.
So finally, for those who actually want to learn, what would be your final words? Let's say if you were to talk back to your younger self, what would be your final words to your younger self in terms of sales and in terms of career and everything?
Yeah, well, I couldn't tell them because what you and I have been talking about has been 40 years of learning. Here's one of the things I would tell anybody is to understand that we go through different stages of our life as we get older. And there are things, if you're just starting out in sales, your priorities and your perspective, a lot of it you can't change even if you tell the person. I mean, you can't, because look, at 20 or at 30, there was nobody that I was listening to because my numbers proved that I didn't have to listen to them.
Yeah.
But that was stupid. That was short-sighted. But at that age, and here's the rub, if I didn't have that mindset and that attitude that I was absolutely the best, I never would have been able to achieve what I did. So the first thing everybody has to understand is we're all messed up. None of us are perfect. And we're going to make mistakes. And we're going to have priorities that are outside of business, that are going to drive what we do in business. Okay? If your child is hurt, you're not going on a sales call. Sorry, dude, you're just not. You're going to take care of your child.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Joe.
All right.
So tell us about your book and how can my audience can actually just give us maybe one or two key insights from your book and how they can actually go about and get it.
Well, what I just gave you, that's one of the insights. It's this whole notion of understanding that, you are who you are in a certain point of time. You can change a bunch of it, but some of it you're not going to be able to change. So don't stress about it. All right? That's just the reality. And the biggest insight, though, into the book, or that I try to share in the book, is, and we've talked about this a few times, is that sales really is 90% of what's going on here between your ears. It's not what's going on with the buyer. It's what's going on here. And until you get your head around that, until you get an understanding of that, and this is why, as I said before, I do the MOVS process, the mindset, understanding, the value, and sales talk process. Until you go through that, and until you understand that, and you can internalize that, you're kind of stuck with whatever ways you believe. So the book, and I have it priced really inexpensively, the book is a good intro. Are you going to walk away with these major insights? I don't know. It's designed to be a less than an hour read to help you understand where we're going. It's not a textbook, okay? Not a textbook at all.
All right. Thank you, John. All right. How can my audience connect with you, and what platform can they reach out to you, and how can they do business with you too?
But the best way to get me is to go on my website, which is attitudeselling.com. So it's all one word, attitudeselling.com. Book a call with me because my Calendly link is on there. Let's jump on a call and chat.
All right.
Best way to do it.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. John, thank you for sharing your decades of wisdom and breakdown sales in such a clear, practical way. What stood out today is that sales isn't about pressure. It's about process, mindset, and service. To my listener, if you ever first talk in fear, fog, or friction, John approach show that there is a better way. You can connect with him directly at his link in the show notes and learn more about sustainable sales system. Until next time, remember, success begins when you learn how to truly serve others through value that you bring. Once again, it's good to have you on the show, John.
Thank you, Aro. Absolute pleasure.